Good morning, respected director ma'am, respected faculty, dear seniors and colleagues. Today, on behalf of Department of Burns and Plastic Surgery, I'll be presenting the clinical grand rounds. So, our case is of a 3-month female residing from Haridwar whose parents complained of abnormal head shape since birth. So, the parents complained of a small and abnormal head shape since the child was born. The child had a term cesarean section delivery on 8th November 2023. The child had a neonatal ICU stay of 9 days in view of low birth weight, which was 1.5 kg. There was no delay in milestones, no other limb or any other abnormality. There was no known medical comorbidity and there was no past surgery which had been performed on this child. Coming to the general examination, the child was conscious with a pulse rate of 136 beats per minute, with a blood pressure of 86 by 56 beats per minute, respiratory rate of 32 per minute, oxygen saturation of 98%, and the child was afebrile. Coming to the systemic examination, the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, and the gastrointestinal system all had unremarkable findings. Now, coming to the local examination, as we can see, the child has an asymmetrical head. We can see that both the frontal bones are depressed. The shape of the skull is like a triangle called as trigonocephaly. The anterior fontanelle is closed. The head circumference is 30 centimeters. Cephalic index or cranial index, which is the ratio of width to length of the skull, was 83.33, which tells us that the skull was small, also called as brachycephalic skull. On lateral views, we can see that the frontal bones, they are small, they appear fused, they are depressed compared to the parietal bones. We can also see that there is a gap between the sagittal sutures and the coronal sutures. So, a clinical impression is that this is a child which is a 3-month female with multisutural craniosynostosis. To confirm our diagnosis, we proceeded with a CT scan which showed multiple sutural craniosynostosis, bilateral depressed frontal bones, and diastasis of bilateral coronal and sagittal sutures. Coming to the management, so firstly, we planned for an early dynamic cranioplasty with springs. The springs would help in dynamic distraction of the sutures, which will allow for increase in the volume of the skull and help in brain expansion and development. To proceed with the management, we need a multidisciplinary team. The surgical team comprises of the plastic surgery team as well as the neurosurgery team. The plastic surgery team would perform the cranioplasty and the neurosurgery team would help in calvarial dissection. For perioperative management, we had the anesthesia team and the pediatric medicine team to help in postoperative care. So to begin with the surgery, the springs that we would be using are prefabricated before we start the OT. These are made using 16-gauge stainless steel wire, which is bent into a U shape, as we can see, with foot plates at the end, which are bent at 90 degrees. A size of 12 to 14 centimeter is chosen. And when these springs, the tips are approximated to 16 mm, they exert a force of 10 newtons. Coming to the intraoperative management, the child, we secured the IV access using central line. Child was intubated orally. Induction anesthesia was given with the IV fentanyl and propofol, and maintenance was done with sevoflurane. Coming to the surgical technique, the steps of the surgery. First, we do the exposure of the sutures. We give a zigzag bicoronal incision and the scalp flaps are elevated anteriorly and posteriorly. So we can see the sutures, the metopic suture, the coronal sutures and the sagittal sutures, all three are fused. And the dissection is carried up to the level of the calvarium, but the periosteum is stripped minimally. Next, we go for suturectomy. We decided to go for two sutures osteotomy, which was the bilateral coronal sutures and the sagittal sutures. When the suturectomy has been performed, the dura is separated from the calvarium for a distance of 10 millimeter on either side of the osteotomy. Next, we have to place the springs. To place the springs, we perform two holes on either side of the osteotomy, and the foot ends of the spring are inserted inside these holes, and these are placed at least 10 mm from the osteotomy side, so that the spring does not fall outside the level of the calvarium. We use 40 PDS sutures to hold the arc of the springs. Finally, we close the wound in 2 layers after placing a vacuum drain. The total duration of the OT was 2 hours. Next, in the post-operative period, the child was shifted to pediatric ICU on ventilatory support, and antibiotic prophylaxis was given. The stay in the pediatric ICU was for 7 days, and child was allowed orally on POD 6 and discharged in stable condition on post-op day 8. These are the 2-week follow-up pictures of the child. We can see that the shape of the skull is more mesocephalic now. The cephalic index, which was initially of a brachycephalic skull, it has now decreased to 80.5, going towards a mesocephalic skull. The head circumference is also increased by 1 centimeter from 30 centimeters. On lateral photos, we can also see that the depression of the frontal bone has also remarkably decreased, and it is more, the child has a more normal head shape now. Coming to the discussion. So craniosynostosis is a condition where we see premature fusion of one or more cranial sutures. Most commonly affected sutures are coronal and sagittal sutures. It affects 1 in 2000 to 2500 births worldwide. So the suture which is fused, the growth of the skull occurs parallel to that particular suture, and depending upon which suture is involved, we have the resultant skull shape. This is a normal skull. In case of metopic suture, we have a triangular shaped skull which is called as a trigonocephaly. In case of sagittal sutures, we have a boat shaped skull which is called as a scaphocephaly. In case of unilateral lambdoid sutures, we have an obliquely shaped skull called as plagiocephaly. And in case of bilateral coronal sutures, the skull shape is small, which is called brachycephaly. So what are the signs and symptoms of craniosynostosis? First and foremost, what we can see prominently is the abnormal head shape. The child may have delayed milestones. The growth of the head is restricted. Since the volume of the cranium is decreased, there is increased intracranial pressure, which can lead to symptoms of headache, vomiting, and lethargy. So what causes craniosynostosis? In most of the cases, the cause is unknown. It is idiopathic, but sometimes it could be familial or genetic. There are specific syndromes which show craniosynostosis. This is the case of Apert syndrome. This is the case of Crouzon-Pfeiffer syndrome. There are other syndromes which are Menkes, Seter-Chodson, and frontonasal dysplasia, which can show craniosynostosis. Low-dose non-contrast CT scan is the diagnostic imaging of choice to confirm our diagnosis. Coming to the treatment, it has been unanimously accepted that surgical expansion is necessary almost in all cases, and it should be done early in life, preferably before 1 year of age, to prevent raised intracranial pressure. So the strategy of surgical management, it varies among different centers. We have 2 different types of techniques. One is static and the other is dynamic. Static techniques include strip craniectomy, calvarial vault remodeling, barrel stave osteotomy, and endoscopic techniques for non-syndromic craniosynostosis, where a post-operative helmet is applied. The longer the surgery, more is the blood loss. In dynamic procedures, we have springs and distractors. Coming to spring-assisted cranioplasty, this procedure was devised in search for a smaller and a shorter surgery, since the children are very small and cannot tolerate prolonged operative times. It is one of the newest techniques and was first described in 1997 at Sahlgrenska University Hospital, Gothenburg by Lauritsen. Subsequently, it was refined and modified. So the principle is that the skull bone in a newborn or an infant, it is thin, pliable and membranous. So when we perform a suturectomy and apply the springs, it causes linear expansion of the skull perpendicular to the suture. This causes increase in the cranial volume and brain expansion. So this can be applied in various type of craniosynostosis, which is sagittal, metopic, coronal and multisutural. Showing some of our cases. This is a 4-month female with Eppert syndrome with bicoronal craniosynostosis, where suturectomy followed by springs was done. This is the long-term follow-up picture showing increase in the shape of the skull and the head size. Another case is of 3-month male with tetracephaly. In this case, we can see on the CT it has a classical copper beaten skull, which is suggestive of raised intracranial pressure. Here we performed distraction with the help of springs for lambdoid sutures, and eventually we can see there is an increase in the head size. So to conclude, spring cranioplasty is a safe technique with no major complications, with lesser operative time. It provides acceptable surgical results. There is lesser need for secondary cranial reconstructions when compared to other techniques, and it can be applied for both syndromic and non-syndromic synostosis. So this is a case report of our first case with spring cranioplasty, which has been published in Neurology India Journal, and this is the first case report about spring-assisted cranioplasty from India. Thank you.
Distraction of the skull bones. So it is a more dynamic procedure and it can be done very early age. In this center, we have done springs at 2 months, 3 months of age. Usually it is done before 5 months because the bones are more pliable. In that age, we cannot use a classical distractor because it requires some kind of a bone stock. So springs are a very good and very cheap way also because we devise them ourselves. And when we put it, and usually we do a posterior skull expansion first, and then anteriorly later on we do a vitreous advancement when the child is about 1.5 years age, when the child can tolerate. We have found very good results. This is our 6th spring cranioplasty, and the reason for presenting it here was to show the results that we could have achieved with this technique.
So first of all, I'd like to congratulate you for a very nice presentation, and the cases that you have done. I think that's also something very heartening to see. I would like to know what is the load of patients that you get, because it must be a referral kind of a service, and I think that way we need to, advertise it more so that people know that this type of surgery is being done here. I do remember in our pediatric practice, we get frequently we get these patients because again PGI was a referral center, And some of them would be subjected to surgery, but I haven't seen such good results which you have shown with. I think this spring technique, because this is relatively newer, I think that is something which can be done on younger babies, as and then they, assume their normal shape of the skull. So, as you said, you design your springs yourself. So, I would like to know, one, what is the metal which is used in this? And like, how do you make them specific for a particular patient? Just a moment, let me finish my question. And then what happens to them after the shape of the skull has been assumed as normal, and if ossification has occurred in a normal pattern, and like, how long do you have to keep these springs on the skull and what's the longest follow-up that we have on these patients? And secondly, what is the neurological outcome of these patients? Because this patient has microcephaly of 30 centimeters, which is very small. So one would like to do neurological assessment right in the beginning also, whether the patient is neurologically absolutely normal, because it is basically maladjustment of the shape. So probably the brain tissue is intact, and as it assumes a new normal shape, it probably continues to be normal and doesn't become abnormal in any way. So one would like to know what is the longer follow-up of these patients from neurological angle. And because some of these syndromes are associated with associated problems like the Sapert syndrome and all, they have a little bit of proptosis, and their, I think, eyeballs are also a little, the socket of the eyeballs is a bit narrow. So what kind of surgeries are done in those patients? And whether this patient had any other syndromal possibility in this particular case. And another thing for you was that it was good that in the end you showed that you should depersonalize the pictures. Like whenever you take a picture of the patient, you need to cover the eyes at least. And so in your, index case, you had not done that. So that is something.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, the first answer is the springs. This technique I learned from Sweden only, because the Gothenburg is the center who first devised the springs. So I have learned to hand bend the spring. There's a particular design of the spring. So nowadays what we do, we use a kind of a stand, the bangle stand kind of thing, and we mold it around it. It's very easy. It's just a 1 or 2 minutes job. So previous to COVID, we used to use the Zimmer. Ma'am, it is patented by them. Basically, it's not patented. It's a technique that has been described and has been adopted in some in various craniofacial centers like the.
But even smaller modifications can be patented.
Yes, ma'am, I know. But
probably using something.
Springs have first been used there, then in Great Ormond Street, then in Philadelphia Children's Hospital. The bigger craniofacial centers, they've all adopted the springs now. So what we do is that the first springs that we made in 2018, we took to Roorkee and we measured the strength of the spring. Since then, we have kept one prototype spring and we hand measure it basically. It's 12 to 14 centimeter depending on the size of the skull. And we keep the gap between the foot plates as about 1.5 centimeter. So when we compress it down, so then gradually it can expand. So that is a very simple way. There are more complicated designs, but this is a more simple design that we can hand bend. Second is, since we do it all before 6 months, at 1 year of age, we need to do a frontorbital advancement or a monoblock. So when we do it, we remove the springs. They can be kept from 6 months to 1 year. After that, they get totally buried. So it doesn't require a separate second surgery. We do it when we actually do the calvarial remodeling in the second stage. But this prevents the raised intracranial pressure, which very frequently occurs in these children before 6 months of age. These children mostly the syndromic children tend to have a very increased intracranial pressure before they become 1 year. So it decreases that, and its posterior skull expansion occurs very early. So the head shape also grows much towards mesocephalic. That is the first. The second, ma'am, a neurological examination of these children. Of the 6 cases that we have done, one was a severely neurologically deficient child, which we did follow up till the COVID time, but after that the child is lost to follow up. Last one and this one we have collaborated with the pediatrics department, Dr. Inder, in fact. So we are trying to follow them up, the neurological parameters, because this child was diagnosed with hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy and was referred to us from pediatrics only. So this child had a little delayed milestones, and the vision, the ophthalmology said that the vision was not optimal, because it's very difficult to see a vision also at 2 months of age. But now when the child has come at 1 month of follow-up, the child is following fingers, has social smile, is eating properly. That part we could understand. 3 months. 3 months, 5. She's feeding properly. She's suckling properly, because previously there was some rice tube feeding also before. When she was admitted for in the NICU, after that also there was a time of rice tube feeding. There was some poor suckling. The vision was plus minus, and so now she's a more active child visibly. But neurological parameters, they said they will assess every 6 months and see how they grow. No, they're not. No. So we'll follow up. So this was the first case we published. So since then we are trying to make the case series and follow them up, the neurological parameters, then and the growth patterns, and the longest follow up we have is 4 years. 4.5 years. Yes, ma'am.
Another thing, since you do a CT in the beginning, the one which you showed of the calvarium, so you would have also looked at the brain parenchyma. And many times, because of this compressive effect, there would be some cerebral atrophy at that particular place. So one would like to pick that up in the CT scan in the cross-section sections, whether this was done in this case. And then after the reconstruction has happened, then one is neurological examination before and after will be very important. And neurological examination can be done right in the neonatal period, and one can know whether the patient has any impairment or not. And many of these patients would get referred late. They, if they're coming from outside, if they're born here, then people will pick up the abnormality and they will immediately refer. So that is one message which should go into the community, that if you find any abnormal shaped skull of the baby, you refer them here and you can have a look and see how much it can be corrected. And secondly, when they come late, when they're already there and nothing has been done about them. So one is their neurological assessment pre-procedure and then post-procedure, because we expect that some improvement would occur, and that is why you're doing it. Many of them would develop raised intracranial pressure otherwise and have hydrocephalus and other things. Outcome of these patients. So please try following up your patients very, very regularly, and you can take help of the telemedicine. These days, every family has a phone.
Yes,
And what you can do is you can start some of these clinics. We have space in the telemedicine center where you can call your 3-4 patients, whichever, like you have some 5 patients of this. You can do their periodic follow-up with they sitting at home, because many times they're not traveling because they don't have means to travel.
yes.
And so if you call them, they will always tell you if there are any problems, if the child has started, doing some more activities or something which will be. So, ये follow-up पे थोड़ा ध्यान दीजिए, because we have facilities available for tele follow-up. And all these people we have in the telemedicine center, they'll help you do it. So set up a clinic.
Okay.
Because anything where you need to visualize, the shape and you want to see the patient, there I think video conferencing will be helpful. So, phone पे तो आजकल कहीं पे भी हो जाता है, but you can actually record these findings and make it a tele follow. I mean, that's another publication that you can get out of it.
Yes.
Chairman is really having
Thank you, ma'am. So this was our presentation on a dynamic spring cranioplasty, which we follow for both syndromic and non-syndromic craniosynostosis children less than 6 months of age. And this procedure is safe with very little blood loss. Usually our average blood loss is less than 50-60 mm in these cases. With less operative time, again the average operative time is about less than 2 hours. If it is a single suture, is even less than 1 hour. And it can be very beneficial for the child because it normalizes the skull shape at an early age without the raised intracranial tension. So we conclude today's session now. Thank you.